Hello, everyone. So today we are going to be doing an idea video Q&A with our very own Tom Guzik. Tom, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tom Guzik. I'm the Director of Digital Integration Services for IDEA.
So today, Tom is going to be asking some frequently asked questions on the topic of migrating to a new EDI provider and all of the ins and outs of that. So let's get started. So my first question that I have for you, Tom, is how do you determine the best method to migrate to a new EDI provider?
How do you determine the best method of migrating to a new EDI service provider? First, you'd want to take a look at how many trading partners are you transacting with? Do you have many multiple mailboxes? Are there a lot of EDI IDs of your own involved as well as your trading partners? And is your EDI department segmented into different divisions? Like, do you have EDI for retail? Do you have it for the C&I channel? Do you have it for automotive? Or is it all really just one industry that you're doing? Because if it's more than just one industry and you have multiple IDs, you would probably want to do a phased migration, or what they would call a slow migration, where you're breaking up the EDI trading partners into logical groups, as well as EDI transaction IDs that would belong to those groups. That way you can control the flow of the migration. You can do it over a period of time versus doing a flash migration, which we'll get to in a moment. But this affords you the ability to really, segment how you're going to move your trading partners, when you're going to move them, as well as organize it into a grouping that makes the most sense. If you've got potentially a few amount of EDI IDs and all your trading partners fall within one segment, so there's no need to break them up into various divisions, you'd probably do what we call a hot migration or a flash migration. In a flash migration, everything is done on the very same day. So all trading partners, all EDI IDs, all mailboxes, all interconnects, everything is done that day to the new provider. Now, the reason why you would want to do a flash migration is less interruption to the potential trading partner base. Because if you are doing it in segments, there's always the possibility that you may miss a trading partner, or there may be an ID or mailbox that doesn't get moved because you're trying to do everything at once. And you also risk the possibility that your trading partner's van may not be able to handle all those IDs in one day. So you need to consider that part of it.
Great. So that's a perfect segue to the second question, which is what are the pros and cons of a hot migration versus a slow migration?
Sure. The pros and cons of a hot migration versus a slow migration. Let's go with the hot migration first. Hot migration, flash migration, that is basically you do everything at the same time, all trading partners, all mailboxes, everything's migrated at one specific date. The pros of doing that is you get it done very quickly because you have one day where you're going to have potentially a lot of work and a lot of anxiety because you're moving your entire EDI base over to a new provider. But if you spend the proper amount of time preparing for it and getting everything ready, you just have to schedule that one day, have all your people in your department ready for that, notify your trading partners of that date and time so they can watch their traffic, and it's done. It's a very quick process. The cons of it is that since it is a quick process, you do everybody at the same time, you may find that there are limitations. Some vans will only migrate, like say 70 IDs in a day. So you would be forced to try to get them to either bend that rule, or your flash migration may actually take a couple days, which sort of goes against the principle of why you were doing that. And why that could be bad is if you only have one EDI ID that you are using for all of your customers and trading partners, the ID can only sit in one van at a time. You can't have it loaded to 2 vans or more than that. So how do you segregate your traffic to know that all these trading partners are going to be using this ID, or you need to create a secondary ID just for the migration, which becomes a bit of a logistics problem, because now you have to notify all those trading partners that you want to have on that second wave of your hot migration actually switch to using your new ID just for that temporary period. And that's going to be a fair amount of work on them to set up all the profiles and parameters to change just to that one ID. So those are your pros and cons of a flash or hot migration. The pros of a slow or phased migration are that it gives you the ability to make logical segregations within your EDI traffic with your trading partners. It also gives you that opportunity if you have multiple IDs that you can go over and then make a specific grouping. Saying all my trading partners that are using XYZ trading partner ID will be migrated on this date, so that you can set that up with the vans and essentially take care of any kind of limitations. The cons of it is that you're stretching this out. How do you determine the logical breaks? You could potentially go over and stop some of the EDI on, say, your billing department side or the financials, trying to accommodate your order processing side. So again, the pros and cons, you can usually correct for some of the cons, but it's important to determine, is it going to be a hot flash migration or a slow or phased migration? And honestly, you may want to involve your new service provider within that discussion, because they can best tell you what they're able to handle and help guide you on your decision.
Perfect. So our next question is, what are outage tolerances and how do they affect the migration process?
Oh, excellent question. Yeah. Outage tolerances and how they affect the migration, they have to do with when you're doing a phased migration, you have potentially with every trading partner, you could be doing several transactions. That some are going to be the ordering, some are going to be the shipping documents, and some are going to be the billing documents. So the tolerance is going to be if you're breaking up your migration into a phase where you're going to have to do some on one day and the others on another day, you may inadvertently be shutting down one of those departments because the EDI transactions, say for billing, may not go out. So you could have potentially a couple days delay before you get to that next wave of the migration. So the tolerance is going to be, is your company prepared to go over and say, let's hold on billing and then focus on getting the new orders in, so that at that point you would say, all order processing type EDI transactions will be migrated first, and then the next phase will be for, say, the billing, or maybe even do shipping next. That way, you see, what is your company able to tolerate? Can they afford not to put out shipping documents and, in favor of getting orders? Or would they rather go over and say, let's get the, order documents in first, and then let's do billing, and shipping will be last. So it's really a matter of what your company departments are willing to live with, and essentially what kind of a condition your financials are in. Because if you really need to bill, then you probably will just go over and skip the shipping documents to make them last.
Great. Okay, so our next question is, what are the most important responsibilities for either the customer or the EDI service provider that are vital to a successful migration?
The responsibilities that are the most important for a successful migration to both the company migrating and to the service provider is going to be the prep work. Because before you do any kind of a migration, you're going to want to go over and take a look at your entire trading partner community. And that would be analyzing each trading partner, what transactions that they are sending, who is the appropriate contact at that trading partner company, what EDIDs are they using, how many mailboxes do they have set up, and are there any special processing that has been put in place over the years. Frequently, when a trading partner has been set up, there may be additions to their profile, such as a delimiter conversion or some carbon copying that's set up that may have been overlooked. It may not have been documented properly. So when you go to do the migration, if you don't take that into account, you will have, in essence, shut down that trading partner when you move because you didn't account for that. So a careful audit of every trading partner, every ID that's being used, the transactions that each one is transacting with you, exchanging, as well as are there any type of special processing being done, as well as are there any like special hosted connections that may have been set up for that particular trading partner. Because if you don't account for that, again, come migration day, those hosted connections would have had to been set up first before you actually do the migration. So you can basically have a big problem with customers who aren't going to be able to send or receive to you. And the same thing goes with the service provider. What their key responsibility is going to be is you're going to provide them a list of the EDI IDs, and they're going to go over and validate each one of those IDs to the van provider that you've listed. If you don't know your trading partner's van that they're using, then your service provider will look that up because they can have access to that. So they'll want to confirm that every ID has a van that it belongs to, and that maybe one of the vans that you said that they were using isn't actually accurate. They may have switched to another van, but nobody was ever told that. So that come migration day, each van that is involved in all your trading partners, they'll need to be alerted 2 weeks prior to that migration so that they can take the steps to notify the trading partners that day they're going to move their IDs at, say, a specific time. So typically you do it at, say, 11 a.m. local time on any day in the middle of the week. You don't want to migrate on a Monday. You don't want to migrate on a Friday. So those are, I would say, are the most important things that both the company doing the migrations as well as the company being migrated will take into account.
And Tom, our last question is, what are some of the most common issues or mistakes that occur during the migration process?
The most common issues or mistakes during a migration process are going to be poor planning or no planning at all, because you could end up migrating your customers' IDs to the new van setup only to find that maybe half of those IDs are no longer valid. They're not being used. So you've now burnt up, precious hours that are assigned for your migration to set up mailbox and IDs that may never need to be used. So it kind of goes back to the prior question, the proper planning. You may have 50 IDs for a particular trading partner that you set up over a period of years, and only 4 of them are being used. The other ones were temporary. They were set up just for projects, testing. So there's no need to go over and spend the time and resources to move them. And the other thing that can really be a gotcha is, did anybody follow up with the vans for other trading partners on that day to ensure they actually made the switch? Because you may have, your trading partners in total may have 5 different vans that are being used, and one of the vans may have forgotten. So, it's a very common thing where, say Tuesday at 11 o'clock, one of the vans doesn't make the move and everybody else did. So EDI is flowing, everybody thinks everything's fine until a couple weeks go by when your trading partner calls up and says, where's my order? I sent this purchase order in weeks ago. It's not been shipped. Then you realize that there's a huge gap, that none of those IDs got moved from that particular van. So following up with everybody to make sure that they did what was supposed to be done, they moved on the day and time, as well as really looking at your traffic, your EDI flows, to see, are you getting the orders? Are you getting the invoices? Are you getting really all the transactions that you saw before from those trading partners? Or is something appear to be missing? Or sometimes even, are you getting something that you didn't get before that you don't even have set up? So that's also a thing where you may be getting transactions that your company never authorized them to send, but yet it's coming through, and depending on how your billing structure is, you may be paying for it. Plus, you can't really use a transaction. So it's really just following up to make sure everything was done, all the special connections were set up, any special rules are in place, and they're actually happening. So someone validates that if you're doing, say, a delimiter conversion, that's actually happening, and you're seeing those changes go through.
Great. Well, that's it for our questions. So thank you so much, Tom. I think that this will be extremely beneficial for anyone that is embarking on an EDI migration process. And thanks again.
You are welcome. Thank you.